Nice outside, isn't it? It's a wonderful evening. What do you have there? 6 stories of love and violence. And an anthology series. Cold Blood, Fatal Fables by Bill Kafer. This seems like a very good looking prey. 6 stories. The world is full of conspiracies, syndicates, crackpot cults. Cops have to be tough, and Shepard is as hard-headed as they come. When his lost love's son is kidnapped, he drops everything to get the boy back. The boy who should have been his. There's something about Brooklyn Blackie and the rap stars. Ooh. Very juicy indeed. I'm quite liking look at this. You know what? Call the pack. And let's feast on this together. This is gonna be a good read. Luxurious meal that we're about to partake. Cold Blood, Fatal Fables by a story hunter by the name of Bill Kafer. It's very enjoyable, and I've taken a liking of this scrumptious prey, and I will be sharing a part of it with you. There's a serving here by the name of Shepard. Before we go into this, the story hunter wants us to know about the world that he's made. It's known as the Aesop world, and you may know there are some languages that will be changed, some of the species that would be clear to understand, and some that are not. And I will do my best to describe what those creatures might be. Anyways, this is based in an alternative reality, an urban fiction, as you can say, where mostly everyone is a form of anthropomorphic animals, such as myself. The only difference is I'm a werewolf, and as with everybody else in this world, they were born as just animals, humanoid animals of their own variations. As you can see here, this person in this book, his name is actually known as Brooklyn Blackie. One of the parts you could read on your own. I will provide a way for you to partake of this prey, so that you can take it home and read parts of it for yourself to enjoy. But there are some things that are enjoyable. There, as I mentioned before about the alternative reality that will be changed and altered. You notice that in his foreword, in his preface. That'll be something you could read, but inside it he goes and talks about the journey he made in this life that led to the creation of this book, and then also led to the various creation of what is known in this world as the furry community. And it is very full of, and this one is very full of interesting stories and characters. So I encourage you to take a moment of your time to go ahead and sample a bit. You might enjoy what you read. So without further ado, Let's go into this. Let's go into this prey, this book, in this part of the anthology series by the man known as Shepherd.
Towers and water wheels, the Alsatian cursed. Can't you see that I'm working here? The single hanging light bulb swung back and forth behind the large police detective. Each time it passed over the head of his suspect, it singed a little more of the cat's head fur. The feline squirmed in his cubs, but he hadn't broken yet. The confession, an honest one at least, was still at least an hour away. If Andrew Shepard was any judge of these things. Lieutenant needs to see you, Shepard, the mutt said by way of apology. They were partners on paper, but the mixed breed dog knew his place. He usually waited out his interrogations unless Shepard signaled him to play good cop or bring in a folder of random paper. Watch this pussy for me, would you, Diego? I'm innocent. I ain't doing nothing. The cat's missing teeth made his speech sound a bit muddy. Shepard slipped into his jacket and shook his hat in the cat's face. Innocent people do not resist arrest. You better tell Detective Diego what we need to know before I get back. You'll get a better deal from him than me. But I'm innocent, the cat wailed. But Shepard was already out of the interview room and marching up to the fourth floor. He knew Mr. Frisky was innocent of blackmailing several city councilmen, but he was protecting someone. Diego might not break him, but all he had to do was patiently and slowly explain what Shepard might be willing to do. A white fur terrier rookie named Lucky pointed him to the conference room where Lieutenant Pace was speaking to an otter family whose comprehension of English was questionable at best. Gaulish-speaking Canadian tourists trying to explain how their daughter was almost undone by a Stoat in broad daylight. Shepard slipped into the conversation and took control with his oxblood accented Gaulish, much to the relief of his commanding officer. Shepard had a knack for languages, and he was pleased to make himself useful. Catching a break in the latest 6-feet case could net him some nice headlines. If it was the same Stoat, there was a chance that he had moved on to targeting foreigners to avoid getting caught. New Amsterdam attracted thousands of tourists a day. Very few of them would be willing to wait around until the suspect was captured. Even less would wait for a trial. I work in New Amsterdam a week each month on business, the father otter reassured him. 100 briskers pumped up and down as he confirmed his commitment to prosecution. The woman and his family seemed less certain, but they didn't argue as he promised to make his daughter available to testify. Shepard swore that they would find the varmint. He translated her pace, taking control of the interview. He was raised in the trappings of wealth and said all the right things to make the artist feel comfortable. He sent the right terrier to fetch a sketch artist and stayed for the translation needed. He hardly noticed when Pace sneaked away and all but ignored the bear investigating the albino fiend, as the papers called the Stoat suspect when the paper sales needed a boost. Stife might know enough Gaulish to order some cheese, but beyond that, he was at Shepard's mercy, and he knew it. It was less than an hour later when he offered to escort the artist back to their hotel. The young auto guard was a bit shaken, after all, and Shepard had learned the family had social connections to the mayor's family. They happily accepted, and as they preceded him down the stairs, he began to wonder how all those thick tails were going to fit inside his purported transportee. Before he made it to the first floor, the little white rookie stopped him and pushed a pink memo slip at him. Rex Sherman has been calling for you. He says that it's a matter of life or death. My cousin? I wonder what trouble he's in now. Still, Shepard knew a reasonable excuse when he saw one. He apologized to the artist, saying that he must attend to his own family emergency. Officer MacDonald would be taking them home. The terrier's native tongue was Highland Gaelic, which was close enough to Gaulish to hustle them home safely. As Lucky stammered something about not having a car, Shepard all but ran off to the interview room, where he left Diego with his suspect. He'd walked in to find his feline with a crop of burnt fur, soaking wet and cowering in the corner. Shepard looked at Mutt with a sense of awe and pride, but Diego was humble. That crazy kid stuff he's using is apparently flammable. Apparently, Shepard said drolly. Did you learn anything from him? Nope, not a thing. Cut him loose. Shepard smiled and met the cat's helpful look. With that haircut, his friends are going to assume he talked, and when they go after him, he'll come running back to us. Won't you, Mr. Frisky? Cat hissed and spit as Shepard whispered to Diego that he had to take up to see his special family problem. Diego gave him a sly look that intimated that he was sneaking off to be with a woman. Shepard forced a tight ears forward smile. A gentleman never tails. He glanced at the pink little square. The return card requested was to his own number. The bastard, he thought, and strode angrily out of the Red Claw police station. Passing the smaller rookies, he smartly organized 2 patrol cars to get the artist back to the Ritz. Park Slope was not a quick drive from Red Claw, but it got a lot quicker when you have a siren. Rex's silver ghost is parked outside of the detective's relatively modest home. There was no driver leaning against it. This would be his dim cousin's idea of discretion. Oblivious to the amount of attention Rolls-Royce would attract, he was probably very pleased with himself for driving the car here all by himself, growling so softly and continually that he might as well have been purring. Shepard stomped into his house. The dog was taken aback a bit to discover that Rex was not alone in his living room. A female wolf stood by his bar, Lynn Black. Her maid outfit was rumpled and stained with bleach. A few new gray hairs on her muzzle hadn't diminished her beauty. Words died in his throat. This was the brown and white she-wolf whose picture he carried into Tejas during last years of the Apache War. The woman who tried to wait for him. The girl who wanted him more than anyone he had ever known. The love he threw away when a coyote's bullet destroyed what he thought of his manhood almost 2 decades ago. Time tried to stop, and they all waited to see what it would do. Rex cleared his throat and gave his cousin an apologetic look that said, I tried to warn you. Aloud he said, I thought you would have called me back first. Shepard flicked Nancy Boy's words away. Then, what are you doing in? Lynn howled in a sudden display of despair. She was halfway across the room in an instant and clutching Shepard's lapel. With tears running down her face, the wolf cried, They took my baby! Shepard stood there frozen, uncertain, before embracing her and patting her back. He glanced at Rex, but his ears were casual and his tail still. For once, his pose was poker perfect. Neither of them were surprised that they had taken the youngest, Blake. That had been the plan, of course. 2 chips and a bowl of whiskey later, the 2 dogs had maneuvered the tallest she-wolf into the love seats by the fireplace. Rex sat down beside her, comforting her and making soft noises that seemed to encourage Lynn into gathering her wits. Lynn, Shepard urged, tell me what happened. Blake was walking back from Mrs. Grimsky's. She's an elderly Polish dog across the street. She used to watch Blake, and now Blake is helping her translate her recipes to English. Big wet eyes met his, something like accusation burning in them. Very much like you that way. Another awkward moment. Both Rex and he shared the family's gift with language. Shepard only nodded. This wasn't the time to talk about the complexities of the bastard's conception. Then what happened? He urged her. Men in cloaks and a truck pulled up and took him. She made a fist. He fought back so hard. He kicked his leg braces off. Startled, Shepard had nearly dropped the cigar from his thin black lips. He hadn't cared to know too much about the pup over the years. Polio? Then shook her head, but it was Rex that explained. Blake wears corrective shoes. He was born with a slight plantigrade malformation. I've been helping with the doctor bills. Shepard glared at the dimwit. We don't have throwbacks in our side of the family. He bit the words back. Rex was too soft for what needed had to be done. He asked instead, "People saw this?" Then nodded. "One of the neighborhood children. A rapt boy." Shepard nodded. He understood now, but he asked anyway, "Why come here? Why not go to the police?" "The cop on the beat, O'Mallory, will listen to a cold boy and then took a deep breath. "And Blake ran away before. But this is different. Damn it, Andy! Blake has a library book out. If he was running away, he'd have taken it with him." Shepard's tail wagged in spite of himself, not just because it was cute that a kid wouldn't leave a book behind, but she had called him Andy. He had a selfish urge to chase Rex from the room and comfort her for a moment. He squashed it by thinking of Waldo, the wolf whose facial fur was similar to Shepard's. "And what does your husband say?" Lynn's ears fell back and she looked away for a moment. When she met his again, her face set in mild anger. "He thinks Blake ran away. It's hard for him. He's smaller than the other wolves his age. His oldest brother has figured out that he's not a full wolf. It's strained things. Of course, Waldo's a little resentful of Blake." Shepard nodded with shallow sympathy. Only Lynn had ever thought that having a basset half-breed would not be a strain. Even Rex, as dim as he was, knew what every rich privileged mammal should know. Hybrids might be equal in the eyes of Rice, but in practice not so much. Waldo might seem to resent the bastard under his roof, but Shepard knew that wasn't the case. Waldo had come up with this plan. Her husband had known that he'd have to watch this boy grow up under a death sentence. Shepard imagined that even the hardest heart might soften under such a burden given enough time. Of course, the crazy sect that persecuted Waldo's family was more than a bit overdue. Supposedly, whatever they needed to do with Blake, they needed to do it with a star in a certain alignment. It had been that way when they killed Waldo's father. The same celestial event occurred when two of Waldo's brothers were kidnapped and eviscerated. And then there was the threatening letters that if Waldo had a seventh son, the same thing would happen to his next child. So he stopped at 6. It had been the beginning of the 20th century. Waldo didn't believe in the family curse. Yet what had happened to his father and brother had been real enough. Shepard had looked into everything, and, reading between the lines, he could see that this cult had people in enough of the right places to keep the investigation from exposing them. Waldo sold him on the plan that exposing the fabulous hating cult would make his career. Shepard had brought in Rex for 3 reasons. Shepard's manhood was painfully incomplete. Rex had a similar coloring to Shepard and Waldo. But perhaps most importantly, Rex had his own manhood issues. The Mickey Finn and the badly kept secret of a bastard love child protected Rex from rumors of his homosexuality. It was important to keep the family's holding in the family. Shepard had lost his claim to his family business by running off to play cowboys and Indians. His father's will prevented him from taking any of the board seats that Rex's dumbass filled. He hadn't missed it until he realized that Rex was the last male Shepard heir standing. Waldo was grateful that the pansy's contribution to his plan. He could see Lynn leaving him for Shepard. The idea that Rex might break up their marriage was impossible for either of them to conceive. Shepard had realized he let the silence drag on too long. He strolled to his bar and poured out a small bowl of whiskey for himself. His manhood had always tried to rise to the occasion whenever he caught Lynn's scent. The scars always burned when this happened. He looked up at the ceiling and waited for the pain to pass. "Andy, please. I know you investigated these people before." Lynn rose from the love seat, but Shepard wasn't looking at her. He was thinking of the day that Waldo sent her to him, the day he discovered that she still had a painful power over him. "Can't you? I don't know. Check them out? Can't you at least check to see if they are even still around? He put down his bowl and looked at Lynn for a moment. The agreed upon script was that Shepard should tell her no, that Waldo was right, or that there were so many twisted people that would want a young boy for their own purposes. Oh yes, Rex could tell her all about that. Yes, tell her what happens to a boy taken from the street. Why don't you, Rex? He jammed a cigar into the ashtray on the bar and worked up his courage, hating himself for this weakness. She'd hate him forever. Once a boy's body was found, she'd hate him forever. No amount of headlines or convictions would ease her pain. Waldo would reclaim her, maybe even give her the seventh son of the seventh son she had always wanted. He never'd see her again. He never feel this awful, searing pain again. Shepard looked at her. Her ears were back and trembling. Her tail slipped out of the girdle domesticated help used to hide their tails, and hung straight down, actively trying not to curl up between her legs. His mouth would not work. He glanced at Rex, hoping for some help. He didn't love Lynn like he did. But Rex's eyes were wide and wet too. His cousin shook his head no, while his ears sent nonsense semaphore signals. Shepard decided that he'd defer to tomorrow. It would be less of a no. He couldn't burst into the church, even a crazy one, on the say-so of a fresh out of the show rep that he hadn't interviewed. The boy would be dead by then, but at least he'd have tried. She might not hate him forever. He fingered the silver water wheel around his neck, and had a quick prayer to his eyes for strength. Rex barked slightly, cutting his prayer short. Andrew! Please, he's my heir. Ears back, eyes wide. His cousin saw that this was no act. The water wheel fell from Shepard's fingers and he rocked back. His hackles rose and he growled. He put out his own ears to control himself, to keep from striking his dim cousin. Lord help him if he started. Shepard knew he'd never stop. Red haze came over him and he forced his hands down, letting clumps of fur fall to the hooked rug. He tasted the tipping point of rage. He knew if he didn't go out and kill something that needed killing, he might hurt the people he loved. Lynn, where's Waldo now? He's home. He promised to call you in the morning if Blake didn't come back by then, but I couldn't wait. I didn't think she should, Rex added, glaring death rays so bright he couldn't see. Shepard grabbed his cousin off the love seats and dragged him into the kitchen. Rex flailed powerless to stop the buff dog from stamping against the pantry. Rex protested as he stamped it twice more. You were supposed to stay away from that kid, he whispered growled onto Rex's ears. Don't ever want to see you near any little boys. Rex pushed back. He's my son, and I was a fool to ever agree to his plan. Have you touched him? Have you touched him? Shepard growled and pushed his exposed teeth into his cousin's face. Would you care if I had? He was only meant to be a bait for your big case, right? Rex whispered growled right back. But I haven't. Because I'm not that kind of a monster. I'm not that kind of a monster at all. The police officer glared, wanting to break his cousin, but held back Lynn's presence in the next room. Rex spat on the floor between them. You're going to let a boy die just to make a case against a screwy church you could have just burned it down a decade ago. What kind of monster are you? Shepard was rocked back at the accusation. As much as his cousin's discovery of her backbone, he stabbed Rex hard enough to knock the fight right out of him. At least I'm a real man, you stupid Nancy. Shepard went back to the front of his house, where the tallest she-wolf was pacing. He shrugged into his coat and placed his bowler on his head. She looked at him hopefully, and just those eyes quelled the fire he'd been stoking. For you, Lynn, for you, I'll check it out. I'll check out the Illuminati Arcana.
Man, boy, what has Shepherd got himself into? As you can see, the story has a way of hooking you in, which is a very good, strong lead in most stories. But there are some things that I have noticed while reading. Some of what is known in some terminologies that is known as grammar tags, formats, some of the sentence structures, they're not clear. Hopefully I help explain who's talking, which there's one slowdown. It's something that should be explained. You see, as we go into Shepherd's life, we know that he's a renowned detective. He's trusted in the community and in his field at large. That some things may have dragged on a bit longer than it should. That was when he was talking to the Outer family, where Shepherd have started to develop as a character. One of the strongest feats of the Prose so far, it's their world. There is a great character development within this, with Shepherd's personality. He was highly popular in his field. I mean, a veteran in his field. But the point is that he's a man of his career, such as taking down of the cult. But he was willing to put that all aside for Brooklyn Blackie. When a character is about to go on a journey, it gets them out of their comfort zone. This is out of Shepherd's comfort zone, where if he would have chosen on a ladder, it would have helped his career, but it would have put him farther away from Lynn. In this choice in his life, it may or may not help his career, but it makes him a better Alsatian, better dog. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask. If you have any comments or corrections, something you want to complain about, let me know, because, well, I'm open to any critics as to how I could do this a lot more better. Go ahead and leave a suggestion here too. If you have stories that you'd like to share, small ones to large ones, go ahead and share those to us, and we'll feast on them together. We are making several good changes within this pack. We want this pack to flourish and to spread, so that others can come and we could all feast upon what has been given. So if you're new here and if you like what we have to talk about, if you like what we have to share, join our pack. Be ready to hunt when you hear our howl.